Call the meeting to order. To the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Does anybody have any corrections or changes to the minutes from December 5th meeting?
I didn't see any minutes, so I wasn't sure if we had them typed out or sent out.
Oh, I sent them out yesterday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Oh,
was,
I haven't checked my email yet today, so.
They look fine to me.
they looked okay. I read them over, and
Yeah.
they look fine to me.
Motion to accept.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Right?
Date of next meeting, March 13th.
We also had minutes for the 13th.
What's that?
We had minutes for December 13th.
I'm sorry.
For both, there's,
Oh, yeah. How about the meeting on December 13th, the minutes from that one?
that's, both are fine,
Okay.
as far
All in
as I
favor?
could see.
Aye. Okay. Next meeting is December
Can we
13th.
get a motion to accept?
Motion to accept. Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Date of next meeting.
Yes. We're skipping February,
Yep.
so it's going to be March 3rd or 13th?
We had said the second Tuesday.
Oh, the
Second Monday.
Second Monday, the 13th. Okay. Correspondence, George.
Is there a packet for Sue? There you go. You are welcome.
So only two pieces of correspondence we've had so far. Hold on a second. Just a reminder, if anyone's interested, on Friday the 20th, we're going to be having a legislative breakfast over at the Somerset Public Library to talk to the state legislators about the importance of supporting the libraries and the state budget, increasing state aid, funding to the library systems, supporting funding for digital services, as well as the construction grant program. It's at 8 a.m. Because they're crazy. Unfortunately, I have failed in my attempts to improve the food at this year's breakfast, which, as far as I'm concerned, is a breakfast in name only, and the spread is still wanting. I have apologized. The reason I joined the committee to begin with was because the food was so bad at the last one I went to, and I mean, we've got an extra $2 million in state aid funding to the state, so I guess it's working, but the food is not good enough to my standards. So if anybody doesn't want to go because of the crapness of the food, I completely understand.
I have a 10 o'clock dentist appointment, so I can't go.
Very good.
I signed up to go,
Okay.
despite the food.
It's too early.
It's okay, yes. Well, the point of it is so that the legislators still have time to, get up to Boston if they have meetings or things like that. So the time placement is where it is for a reason, and I understand the reason, but I'm still cranky about it. But alas, we have a good spread of speakers who are going to be talking. The state rep from Somerset is going to be doing a keynote address. And then we're going to be having some folk from the Tri-Town Against Racism group coming to speak about some of the book banning efforts they fought against over in ORR, which are ongoing. There's actually, I think, 16 books currently actually being challenged and are under review by the ORR school board as a result of some community groups over there. So they're going to be talking about that, which is a very timely topic for everything that's been in the news the last year or so. And then the other save the date that we received is I think it's March 15th or 16th. But we're going to be going back and doing the first legislative day visit to the State House in, I think, 3 years. So every year before COVID, there would be basically a bus of folk from down here who travel up to the State House to visit the legislature, talk to your state reps or your state senators about the importance of supporting the libraries and yada yada. It's an open invitation to library directors if there's some staff that we wanted to bring, trustees, friends of the libraries, things like that. Normally what happens is sales will rent a van and then they'll ask for, some money per head to cover the cost of the van or the bus to go up, depending on how many people are interested. I'm excited because it's actually going to be, I signed up for it in 2019 or 2020, and it was going to be my first time ever actually inside the State House, because I've never been before, and then it got canceled because of the COVID. So
Pretty amazing to visit to the State House.
Yeah.
I went once, Roderick's took us around and showed us all the stuff.
That's cool.
And I found amazing, outside, they still had all the little wooden telephone booths where the reporters would call in the news. It must be like 40 of them all lined up there.
Yeah. Well, it's for me, it's a little sad because in high school I vowed I'd never set foot inside of the State House till I was elected as a state rep in my own right. So I had to break my vow in service of the library. So you all are welcome. But when I get more information about that in terms of the bus or things like that, I'll email it around since it'll be before our next meeting. That's what I got.
What do you got? Next, Director's Report.
Yay. It's an interesting month. We are definitely continuing the winter dip, so that is, the numbers month to month are lower, but if you actually go back and look at the 2021 numbers, the door count is still 600 people higher than it was last year. So we're really sad that it's lower than last month, but year over year, it's still higher than we were last year, so we're really happy with that. We're still waiting on the last of the circulation numbers to come in, but I anticipate it's probably going to be approximately the same as November, given usually the only number we don't have yet is the out-of-region digital checkouts, and we've been consistent around 200 to 250 per month. So that number should come in approximately the same. New patron registrations went up significantly from November to December, so that was really good to see. And that wasn't, any school groups or anything like that. That was just people coming in. So that was exciting. So as a result, we actually did increase our total registered patrons. We signed up more new library cards than were deleted out of the computer from inactivity. So we're back over 4,600 registered card holders. So really excited about that.
How many did you take out of the system?
When they did the big delete, and they got rid of everyone who hadn't used their card. In the old system, what happened was if you didn't use your card after 3 years, there was basically your card expired, and then there was basically your card was moved to inactive. I think it was after 6 years it was of inactivity was deleted, unless you had a fine. So if you had a 1 penny fine on your library card account, it would stay forever. And then last year, somebody was reading this law, and they kind of were like, well, if technically you're not supposed to collect, you can't legally collect stuff older than 7 years. So they decided to delete everything after 7 years at that point.
But how many last
So
month?
we
How many
lost-
last month? Just last month.
I think it was about 25-ish. I'd have to go back and do the math. But I mean, if you compare the number we had last month to this month and then subtract the new patron registrations, that would give it to you.
Oh, okay.
But overall, in terms of when they did the big delete, we lost about 2,000 because we were just about around, close to about 6,000 or 7,000 before. But we're making progress. And then I specifically want to really focus and give a shout out to Amy. On December 27th, in the week in between Christmas and New Year's, we were wrapping up the year, all this stuff. I was checking our Facebook page and I noticed that we were at 697 Facebook followers. And I went to Amy and I was like, Amy, January 1st, I want to have 700 Facebook followers. Make it happen. And if you notice the number, It is exactly 700. So she did
She
it.
got it get done in December.
She did it. So she cranked up the Facebook posts and the Instagram and the what have you. And she hit the number. So we are officially at 700 Facebook followers as of January 1st. So I
You're
wanted
rather
to,
demanding, aren't you?
I gotta say, you know, when I throw down the challenge, the staff are able to rise to the moment.
So they had their neighbors, everybody phoning in, logging on.
That girl's Portuguese, so I know how much family she has. So I don't know if she got cousins to do it. I'm not asking any questions. All I know is she hit the number. So I wanted to give her a shout out and say, I'm a demanding man on occasion, and the staff are able to meet the standards that I set, and I'm very proud of them for that.
Okay, good for you.
He has a whip.
But I digress. Unfortunately, December turned into the month that sickness hit us. Basically, everyone on the staff, except for two, took at least one sick day. So it got a little rough, a couple of points. We did have to delay some of the long-range plans and long-range projects we were working on, but the front desk direct circulation, books getting checked in and checked out, were not affected. The other big problem that we're having isn't us related, it's delivery related. They're having a very high sickness and turnover hit our delivery service that's moving books between libraries. So we're seeing a longer wait time for books when they're requested to come in from other places, just because they are constantly having one person out and having to move over and bring a driver over who doesn't know the route. And that's been affecting service. Normally, before, we were getting book delivery around 10 o'clock-ish. Sometimes now it's not coming in until 12, 1 o'clock, just from the delays and having to train a new person every couple days. But it is what it is. When the books come in, they're still coming in within a week, so it's still faster than it used to be. It just isn't as fast as it has been. But yeah, we did receive approval from the Westport Food Pantry Board of Directors to distribute our flyers. So we'll be working on that and getting those over to them, hopefully for their next pickup, which might not be this week. It's probably going to be next week's.
Yes, this week already happened.
Yeah. I meant like the next one up. It might be one more cycle. The FinCom presentation went fairly well, I would feel, and we'll talk about more about that later in today's meeting. The final piece of furniture from the Friends donation in July, I think that was, the picnic table has been delivered, assembled, and placed in the back next to the shed. You can sit on it and it doesn't fall apart, so I'm counting it as an utter success. There was some interest from the Friends towards also replacing the 3 lounge chairs with the low coffee table. That's near the nonfiction audiobook area. But for the life of me, we couldn't really figure out what else would fit in that area without getting just another bench table set, which might not be a bad idea. The people have been loving that, but I wasn't quite ready to pull the trigger on it just yet.
And it seems about every time I've been here, there's people sitting in those
And that's the
chairs.
thing. But I mean, if we switched it out with the bench and the table set, that would work too, because the people are, you know, the kids and adults love the booth and the bench setup. But we'd be losing kind of like recreational lounge seating. So it's kind of a trade-off. Some people hate those chairs. Some people love them. I think they're fine.
They are hard to get out of once you're in them because
But
they're
that's-
comfortable.
That's one of the trade-offs. So I'm kind of holding any decision on that one way or the other one just because it's kind of a wash one way or the other. As of now, once those chairs break down, because as far as we know, those are older seating. Nobody's exactly sure, and they might actually be original to the library.
On new ones, we should put the date on the bottom. So we
It's
know
not a bad
what it
idea.
is.
That's a good idea. But yeah, there's that. The other thing is, it happened after I typed this up, but the tables that were behind me have been removed back to the closet due to no other town department wanting them and the town not having anywhere else to store them until we have the surplus merchandise auction for the town, whenever that is.
Now, we talked about those might belong to the Friends.
They don't. They're ours. So, alas. I went to the Friends, they're like, nope, they're not ours. It's like, but could they be? And it's like, no, they're not ours.
Did you check with, who's going to check with the other town departments?
I am. I did. So far, nobody's wanted them. And then I asked if there was anywhere else in town to store them until we had the auction, and the answer was no. So we had a situation where, if you see, we have a lovely new exhibit up in our space. This is a panorama shots from postcards of historic Westport. We had an issue since it opened that some people were wanting to get so close to the pictures, literally a nose length apart, that we had some complaints about the tables being against the wall because they were inhibiting people from getting as close to the art pieces as they wanted to be. And then I came in to check on the situation because we actually had about 3 complaints at the front desk about it. And there literally was a middle-aged young lady standing on the tables to get as close as she wanted to the art pieces. At which point I got so annoyed about it that we got the dolly, and Amy did help me, and we got them all back into the closet. But yeah, that one, I gotta say, in 16 years of library service, that was the craziest thing I've seen, other than some of the...
They were leaning against the wall.
They were against the wall, flat.
Right.
But yeah, no, so she was standing on top of 4 stacked tables, so she could get as close as she wanted to the...
This was an adult?
Yeah.
Thankfully, there were no injuries.
He said middle-aged
not
young
an
lady.
adult.
Yeah.
I was trying to be polite about it, but she was conservatively, I would say, north of 60.
George, you
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
think they'd have room for those tables at the old high school?
I asked, and as far as right now, I think they're not storing anything there just to keep their options open about what they're going to be doing with the old high school.
They're using it 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And they use these tables when they have voting.
On the selectmen's meeting tonight, there's one of the topics is what to do with disposal of the high school.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
But
We're
with-
gonna
with those
dispose it to the
tables-
town, because it still belongs to the school.
So have they had the community information meetings?
I don't think so.
Because I read that the chair had mentioned that they were going to have community meetings
That's-
to inform, to educate people about the old school.
Because whatever they do, it has to go before the voters. So it'd be nice to have those meetings to be a little bit informed before something comes on the ballot. But they are using it 7 days a week, the gyms and other parts of the school.
With those tables, they're so heavy that I don't think they could really use them for voting, because it would take at least 2 or 3 people to set them up and then break them down.
But they do use tables like this. for
Like
voting.
this, yeah, but those tables aren't these.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, those are they're extra heavy tables that we only ever use those for the book sale.
My mistake.
So, those tables are so heavy, I literally can just barely pick them up, like as a deadlift, just to slide them in the closet. I don't know how heavy they literally are. I would estimate probably at least 75 pounds, if not more.
That's one of the things that John had an issue with, was those tables.
Yeah.
They do their auctions, that BidNet, not BidNet, municipal bid. So I would call Jim and just have him put them on there. You don't have to have a bunch of stuff. You could put one item on there.
Yeah.
Portsmouth has one fire truck on there.
In the past, the practice has been to put everything the town has at one shot, so,
I would ask him to do it now.
Okay.
Because somebody's going to want to come here and look at them. You got to give him a description, how much they weigh, what size they are, how height, you know,
That's true.
do all that and send it to him, ask him to put it on.
Okay.
It's easy to do. And if they put it on, they're still going to have to come here to look at them. You'll give them hours that they can come here to take a look at them if they want.
Okay.
Because if they get no bids on them, then you can do what you want with them.
Yeah.
Stick them out front for free or something. I don't think anybody's going to take them.
No, I don't think so. And the thing I'm worried about sticking them out front, I thought about it, was just if nobody doesn't take them, then we got to still get them back up here anyways. We can't just leave them down at the corner of the street, especially with, I'm assuming if somebody comes out with a plow and just hits them, and we know whose house they'd wind up at.
So the metal would be recyclable.
Yeah.
I
You
don't
would have
even,
a scrap guy
the
come and
crazy
take
thing
the
is I
wood
don't
apart.
know what they're made out of, like the table itself, because it's so heavy. I don't think it's wood. And for the life of me, I don't know if it's like something that's lacquered around metal or what it is. I have no idea.
But you're right there. A scrap person would come and take them and
That's a
take
good
the wood
idea.
apart.
But, so there's that.
Do you know Tim's
Tim?
copy? I'll call him.
Well, let's wait and see what we have to do with that, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Linda?
Well, story hour will begin tomorrow, and then the following day on Wednesday at 10 a.m., we both at 10 a.m. The lap sit will begin again, and
What is that one again? Refresh my memory.
it's,
Lap sit?
lap sit is what I call the really little program on Wednesday.
Okay.
They're all under one. At least that's what my call group was. So, they really are lap sit.
Yes.
They sit on their either grandma or dad's or mom's lap. So, and then the Friends have planned on a Thursday in February, which is February school vacation week, the Thursday evening at 6 p.m., we have Math Science coming. And if for some reason it's a snowy night, then it will be bumped to the Saturday at 11. So that's what the kids are doing. And as you saw, we had 79 people come to Mr. and Mrs. Claus. And it was just a really fun morning for families. I think the kids did the craft, and we had popcorn and juice, and Mrs. Claus read some stories, and people were able to take photographs by the library tree afterwards if they were interested. And everybody seemed to have a good time and said thank you. So we should definitely think about doing it again.
Friends update, George? I guess that's you.
Let's think. So the big thing with the Friends is the new board of directors has taken over. So Sue is now the president of the Friends, and then we'll be updating the website with the new board of directors as well, probably this week. And I have been informed that at their next meeting, they will be voting on donating the next $20,000 to us for the book and material budget. So the fundraising and the replies and everything has been really heartening to see. They basically have doubled since we took over the amount of money that they've been raising and getting in, which part of that is having, being able to start the book sales back up. But it's also, people are donating more, and they did raise the membership rates. And we've also been helped by the inflation thanks to Lee's Market. So I think last time I checked, we've taken in about $4,500 in the year from the Lee's receipts. So if anybody has receipts from Lee's, please do bring them in because it does make a difference. They donate 1% back from the receipt, which $4,500 from Lee's means that people have donated $450,000 worth of receipts.
And we're just one of many who get that.
And we're just one of many that get that.
Is there any besides the Council on Aging and the food pantry? Anybody else get that?
The Historical Society does.
The
I
Westport
think
Friends do.
Yep.
The Land Trust does
Land
as
Trust
well.
does. The schools do, and then
The Food Bank does too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
Food
A
Bank
lot of
does.
money
I
spent.
think-
Lot of organizations.
I think the veterans might too, but I'm not sure. No, Veterans Affairs, no. Okay. But yeah, so I mean, if you think about it, it's a great way for Lee's to
I'm
help the
impressed that
community.
it's that much. Yeah.
What's that? Yeah. I'm sorry, just so everyone knows, on this side of me, I'm still having problems with this ear, so we gotta project. But yeah, so they'll be doing another $20,000. They'll be voting on that at their meeting. I think it's either this week or next week.
And they got a new website. They did get a new website? That was in their last newsletter.
They got the website, I think, they highlighted it in the last newsletter, but they got that like a year ago.
They did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's the Friends.
New business.
So we're going to be reaching out to the police station to work with us on updating our emergency action plan and shooting response plan. Hopefully in the next month or two. I'm not sure yet on the dates they have for someone to come over.
Do you think we should have a plan before we have them come in?
Last time what happened was they came over and they evaluated the site and they gave us a plan.
Yeah.
So that's how it was done pre-COVID.
We do have a written plan?
No, it was verbal, given the layout of the building At that time, it basically was, they kept it as streamlined and minimal as possible.
Did we have that in writing?
No, it was
No.
just basically they told us what to do, and then that was relayed to the staff.
Do your new staff members know it?
Yes.
That's good.
Should we write it up?
I wondered if it isn't in the minutes.
I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and read through
Because I
them.
know we talked about it when it happened.
Yeah.
I have all the schools' safety and emergency procedures. I haven't had a chance to go through them yet, but I think we should probably put something together so that we could tell our people what to do. Then when the police come in, they can see if we're following the procedure that's been set up. That's what I think.
That's a good idea.
We can put something together and go over it. We'll put something together, bring it up at the next meeting. Actually, I was going to suggest under other topics that we develop a safety committee for the library. Because, I mean, one of the things that bothers me is if the school has, say, an active shooter, we have no idea what's going on over there. Unless somebody calls, and you might call here, you'll get to town hall, the library, and then you finally get to the library, which is a lot of wasted minutes. In Portsmouth, at the school department there, they had at the main desk at each school, they had a panic button. That panic button went to the fire alarm, and the fire alarm got notified that there's a panic at a school, and they called the police. So it was very automatic, because somebody is always at the fire department. They have somebody that mans that desk all the time. The police do not. So it's just one of the things I was thinking of, because more shootings in the schools and stuff, so I don't think we're really prepared for anything here if something happened. And the other thing that I would suggest is everybody comes through that main door. These other doors should be locked all the time.
That's
Even-
That's what we were told last time.
Yeah, okay.
And I think
I
also,
saw 2 people go in just today in there, so it's not locked, or it's propped open.
Well, now it's unlocked. I unlocked it. There's some folks who are.
But it shouldn't be unlocked, is my point.
Even when we're all sitting here and coming
Yes,
in and out
if
that
there's
They
an
can go through
emergency,
the library.
who's going to have to run over and lock that door?
There are some people who, as part of the, how do I say it? We have a practice that there are some community groups who have people of mobility issues that to comply with ADA requirements for necessary and appropriate accommodations, we unlock the door so that they don't have to walk through the whole building to
Not
get to
that
the
long
meeting
of
room
a
space.
walk. And I think the safety overrides that. You do not have time to go lock that door and lock that door if you have a problem. You may have time to lock that door. We can talk about it more, but those are some things that I was thinking of.
It could expose us to a lawsuit, because if you say that safety
I
override.
disagree with you, George. We'll
No,
bring
no,
it up
that's
at
fine.
another time,
Yep.
but we need to protect the people that are in this library and the staff that are in this library. And that overrules everything else.
If you have someone with a disability or, has trouble getting in the doors, you could easily go to a door, unlock it, let them come in
You don't even have
and
to
lock
unlock
it.
it. All you gotta do is open it.
Yes, right. But I'm saying that, that would be
It doesn't
better
matter, yeah, it
than
doesn't matter about, anybody can leave out of any door. It's only coming in. That's the issue.
they should be locked.
Yes.
and there should also be blinds covering the windows that could be dropped in case of a shooter. Give people a chance to run
Well, that's
and
why I think
hide.
maybe we should have a committee that we could throw these things around and come up with some thoughts and then discuss them as a whole.
Sounds like an excellent idea.
And the other thing that I've seen some elderly people having a hard time getting in that door, trying to open the door. It's hard to open. And if you hit the automatic button, you got to walk around the door. Because the door opens this way, the push button is over here. So most people don't use it. They just struggle with the door. I've had a thought, and I mentioned it to George, we have a slider. You walk up, it opens up, it closes. I mean, it's just a thought I had. That way you don't have to worry about the panic thing. As soon as you're in front of the door, it opens.
I'd be interested in being on that committee.
Okay. Okay. That's policies and procedures. It still kind of all falls into that, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, even at the VFW, we had a written procedure on the wall. What happens if you have somebody gets hurt real bad here, who do you notify? What do you do?
Mm-hmm.
Should a trustee be notified, the police, there's just steps you should follow that, what if you got hurt or something happened to you? Do other people know what to do? It's all just part of the whole same thing. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. I think I put
George?
it out of order.
You want to do that one?
If you want, I think I put the packet together in the wrong order a little bit. So if you want to skip down to C and then back to B.
Which one is C? No, not.
No, not. So we have a small, basically the short version is we have somebody on staff who is allergic to nuts. And we've had multiple instances in the last couple months of almost them being exposed to nuts by different groups, either using nuts, bringing nuts into the building, or people having nuts in their bags in the library and them falling out. The allergy is to the point where the person could result in them having to be hospitalized or worse. So with the permission of the board, I'd like to institute a no nut policy for the library, tree, and ground, which I have a rough draft workup of a text to facilitate that. And then the second section is including a new line in our community room use policy, which is under item 13, which would include basically the same thing, so that any community group using the space would also be notified that that is not permitted.
Are you suggesting you have a sign that you
Probably
don't
work
have
something out,
nuts?
so we'd have it in the front window saying the library is a nut-free space.
Because it's a hard policy to enforce.
It's more of having the policy on the books so that we can kind of get people around the
Yeah.
idea that it's a thing.
Right.
I probably wouldn't, it would be hard for us to, and we're not going to check bags or anything like that, but kind of just getting it into people, in front of people, that we are trying to not have any nuts in the library. The staff all already do this. I personally have a list of restaurants that I don't go to now or get takeout from for lunch, just in case, because they use nut products. Because if I touch like French fries that are with the nut oil, fried in the nut oil, and then I touch the keyboard, that could be a problem. So it's taking it one step further.
Right, right, well, it would protect, but I think you need to have a sign because that's
Oh, yeah.
something
Oh,
that
definitely.
people don't think about.
No, yeah, we would definitely put it,
You would see it each time you come in, it would kind of
right,
drill
And it
into
would
your
be
head.
posted online as well with
Yeah.
the other policies.
definitely.
It would seem you would also need to make sure that people wash their hands before they use the keyboards. You mentioned if you. that
Well,
would
that's
be the
mostly for
same.
the staff.
Oh, for
So,
staff.
Yeah, just because of us, the amount of, like, we use the same computers and things like that.
Okay.
So with the public computers, I wouldn't, it's not so much going completely hardcore and like,
Does the staff use the public computers?
usually not.
But you don't have a nut allergy. You avoid places that use nut products to protect your staff?
Yep,
So
when we're working. So if I run out and grab lunch or bring it
Okay.
back, something like
Okay.
that, yeah.
So you're going to write a policy?
Well, this would be basically the draft policy. And then the formal policy would, I'm trying to get them standardized so they all have like the letterhead at the top, which, Don was talking about trying to more formally go through and review all of our policies and get them all up to scrub, which I think we should definitely do that going
I
forward.
think it's a good idea, because even the school does it, is at the very last part, you put the date.
Yeah,
Then if it's revised, you put that date below the other date,
Amended.
so you know what you're doing with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And that's just part of the consistency. I think it's. Joseph?
just on camera, so don't say anything uncouth.
No climbing on the tables.
I agree. I think it's a good idea, George.
Adult did that.
Are we going to accept this the way it is? Or
Well, he's going to write it up as a formal, he's
Well,
going
it
to write
would
it
be
up.
the same text, I would just make it standardized in terms of the
Okay.
style. So text-wise would be,
Do I have a motion to accept the new policy?
So moved.
Second?
Second,
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
and then we would need a second motion to approve the amendment of the community room use policy.
Okay. And I like
Which
the way-
basically, I just changed it, so there's a new point 13, which bumped all the other numbers after that down one, so that it says the library is a tree and ground nut-free space, and products containing or made with such materials are prohibited on or within library property.
And then I like the way you have the other dates, you just add that date to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did we get a motion for that?
Motion to modify the Manton Community Youth Program to make it nut-free. Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you. Which brings us back to B. If you all would be so kind as to approve my request for reimbursement for my Massachusetts Library Association professional membership, as well as the New England Library Association membership. I am currently boycotting the ALA, so that was not included in this year's membership.
Why?
They waffled on a statement of support for a library down in Texas that was privatized by a town that was not, a city that was not happy with the books the library had. And the ALA came out with a weak water statement. And there are a group of librarians who feel that they came out with a weak water statement because the firm that was hired to run the library on behalf of the city donates money to the ALA. So as a result, I am currently not a member of the ALA and will not do so for the time being.
Did you write them and tell them that?
I ranted about it online anonymously.
Oh, okay.
So basically, it's just a vote to either accept or reject my request for my membership to the professional organization for Massachusetts and New England.
Motion to accept George's payment.
Second.
First, second, all in favor? Aye, aye.
If anybody wants to hear the whole story about the Texas thing, ask me after class, because I can go on about it for quite some time.
Oh,
It gets worse, like what they did in that.
you've heard enough.
All right, George, next. B is done. Update on Finance Committee.
FinCom presentation. So before you now, and unless I did wrong in my paper clipping, it should be the entire rest of this packet, is the presentation that I gave to FinCom in terms of the handouts, other than the fact that I updated the numbers on the third sheet with the actual numbers from December. The one I gave to FinCom just had estimates from averages and projections.
Very nice,
Thank you.
whatever you want to call this. Preview.
Infographic.
Infographics, very nice, nicely
Lori
done.
Nelson would be very proud.
To be fair, it is actually just a program where you just drop the numbers in, but
Doesn't matter, you know how to use it.
thank you, sir. I appreciate that. So basically, the cover sheet is just a two-page document going over the new numbers. In the first 5 months of FY23, we have seen an increase in our average monthly circulation compared to the first 5 months of 22 of 1,000 items. Corresponding with that increase, we have also conducted 188 technology help sessions to assist people one-on-one, either setting up an e-reader or with the library's computers. Public access to the internet is becoming even more vital as more and more companies shift to requiring job applications online only. We also see increase in community groups looking to use our meeting room space as people yearn for social interaction following our COVID experiences for the last few years. We have had 92 more meeting room uses over 22 in the first 5 months, as well as an increase in average monthly attendance of 1,542 people total, or an additional 64 people a day visiting the library. This number translates to an average of 176 people visiting the library every day that we are open. Adjusting to an increased and varied workload can be a challenge, but the fantastic staff has shown themselves to be more than capable of rising to fulfill the literary, technological, educational, recreational, and informational needs. I gotta say, I was very proud of myself for stringing that many AL words in a line together. Our department budget therefore reflects our pursuit of these goals to the best of our ability. The FY24 budget has no increase in the number of staff or staff hours. The last 2 years, we have been utilizing state aid grants to fund an increase in work hours for our principal clerk positions. This presents a burden to the library, as those funds could instead be used for many other priorities. I wanted to say unfunded priorities, but I felt that might be putting too much on the nose, so I skipped that. We recognize the high importance to delivering the best customer service possible to the residents of Westport, and see that as the key gateway to utilizing all the other services the library does offer. Thanks in part to this initiative, Westport Free Public Library has had 0 employee turnover in FY22. So we're really proud of that, or excuse me, calendar year 22. And then I kind of went through a little bit of the budget. The only other items in the budget reflect the dual needs, maintaining the library's physical space as well as providing library services. Many other towns, departments that do have similar budgets to ours, they don't have a building to keep up as well. They just have services and staff costs. They don't have building space costs as much as we do.
Nice point there.
So it's one of those things that when you look at comparable budgets, you know, we have more staff, we are open more hours to the public directly, we have more things that we do, and there's no on and off season for us. There's regular, and then there's supercharged during the summer. A lot of the other town departments, they're seasonal. You know, when your assessments go out, there's a spike of people going there. When the beach permits start having to be issued, there's a spike of service there. And the rest of the year, it's kind of level. Our level is this. And then when we get closer to the summer, you know, as the population increases, so does the service. So it's a very different animal, us, compared to all of the other town departments. In FY24, if the proposed town recommendation is accepted, the library will need to spend at least $46,119 on borrowing and circulating materials to maintain our library certification. Without that certification, Westport's residents would lose access to material at all other libraries in Massachusetts and would be refused borrowing services in any other town, which is not fun, which we are currently hoping to avoid, and the budget that we have before us does do so. So if we keep on going, feel free to read the rest of it if you want to. I won't go through it word for word, but basically page 4 is what the town is going to be voting on approving at town meeting, unless something happens between here and there, which is always possible. Jim and I had several rounds of negotiation going back and forth and a flurry of emails. And this is the final over-under on what we wound up getting. So I'm very happy with this budget. We have increases in our heat and electrical line to make up for the increases that we've seen just in electrical and heating rates. The big variable is we don't know what the electrical rates are going to be. We're part of the electrical aggregate program, so it kind of gets set for a year period at a time. So we're still waiting to see what this year is going to look like, and that'll affect what next year is going to look like too.
George, I have a question for you on,
Yes, sir.
It's the staff. The third line down is
Yep.
clerical part-time.
Yep. So the clerical
Is there
part-time.
new staff compared to the last year's budget?
No. So that's still showing the hour increase that we voted almost 2 years ago for Bonnie and Amy. The town still is not in the place that it feels it can fully fund that hours increase. So they've paid for more of it than they did, and they've also picked up more hours for the other part-timers. So this budget fully funds the true part-time staff for 19 and a half hours through the entire year for Robin's position. And then for the other 2 variable part-timers, they work anywhere from 10 to 19 and a half hours a week. With this budget, we'll be able to fund them at 15 hours a week straight through the entire year, which is an increase.
And now what about part-time aides?
Yep, so the part-time, that's the thing. The way that the budget is actually laid out, it says that clerk part-time, they're both full-time, but they're still labeled as part-time because of how they were in the past. So that title hasn't been changed, unfortunately. But basically, this actually pays more towards fully funding their salaries than was paid before. So we're going to have to pay the $17.20 differential out of state aid to cover the difference. And then I've told Jim, I hope he doesn't get mad at me, but every year I'm going to put in for the full amount and then just hope to keep
Absolutely.
chipping away at it until
Absolutely.
it's fully funded. And so far, basically, what he does and what we both do in good faith is through the negotiation process. I know how much money is not coming into the town. There's a lot of necessary expenditures that I didn't ask for in this budget, and Jim knows that too. So we're both coming to it from places of recognizing the needs of the library and trying to recognize the needs of the town as best as we can. And he's been a really good partner to work through that with.
He is good with that,
And
yes.
he is doing as much as he can for us with the financial state of the town, I feel. And the difference between the first round and the second round, this shows you what the final recommendation is. And basically, he was able to give us almost everything I asked for. So I'm very happy with this budget.
Good.
And-
When the situation with the town improves, we can go to town meeting with a warrant. But if circumstances are not right, then it wouldn't be a good idea to do that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the problem is if we did something like that, basically we'd have to, basically the only way it would work would be if we took the money from free cash, which is, you can do it, but then you get into a problem supporting salaries with free cash, because theoretically you don't know if that will or won't be there next year.
Right.
And that's where, from the budgeting side, that gets tough.
Sounds like you did a nice job.
Yes, very nice job.
And like I said, it's, I'm happy. I mean, obviously, like I was saying, there's a lot of stuff that we could put into the budget, like fully funding the book budget. That would be
Yeah.
great, at least the minimal book budget, so we have enough in sort of like $40,000 just to maintain certification. And then, all the money that the Friends raise, we could use for programming or bringing in performers or furniture or building improvements, things like that. Or fully funding the membership with the Sales Library Network. That's something that is really big on my priority list too. As of right now, the town only pays half of what we have to pay every year just to be a part of the Sales Library Network.
I would like to know, like you have some of your building costs.
Yep.
Do we use all that money? Plus some from other sources?
For our building repair and maintenance,
Well, for any of the building, heat, electric, all of them. Heat and electric we're pretty much all set with. Building repair and maintenance, we have $3,500.
Yep.
Is that all we spend?
usually
Or do we spend money from other sources to
Usually
supplement?
we'll spend all of this and then we'll wind up using some from state aid or from one of the different donation accounts,
I think what
typically.
I'd like to see going forward is how much do we have, what would that number really be?
Last year, we didn't spend the entire amount because I got a little, the accounting got a little, we had a problem. But most years, basically, the building repair and maintenance budget is the twice yearly HVAC maintenance and what have you, the building inspections, replacing the air filters on the air filters, and that's the entire budget. And then there's some money in there too for, I think we have like $500 or $600 every year that we put aside through purchase orders to use at ACE if we need to buy new paint or things like that. And that's the entire building and maintenance budget. Anything other than that, we have to use either donations or state aid for.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. If we ever want to go to the town and say we want a full budget,
Yep.
we don't know what that budget is.
Well,
We
it's-
don't, you do.
I don't. But the problem is, like, a lot of the stuff, then you get into deferred maintenance. Like, how much stuff is there in the building that we could do or should do that we don't? For example, one of the things that I want to do this year is figure out air fresheners in the bathrooms. Or, like, we were talking about putting a pump or a motor on the air vent in the bathrooms. Because right now, we had a situation 2 weeks ago where it was a Saturday and we had an incident in the bathroom where someone fouled the bathroom. And I cleaned it up as best as we could, but all the air freshening products that we had at that time did nothing to the air quality, shall we say, of the bathroom. It's things like that where it's like, well, if we had an automatic air freshener on the wall, just, maybe that would help some. If we had air vents that actually pumped out and don't just use air pressure.
Where do we get our custodial supplies from?
Most of the time we get them through, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name off the top of my head.
But-
But they're out of, I think it's Jamestown or Portsmouth.
But
Most
they
of-
would have stuff like that.
Oh, they do, and there's air fresheners we can use, but it's like one of those things that it wasn't in the budget, so we've never done it in the past. So there's a lot of stuff that we'd have to go through and see, well, what else could we be spending? The carpet is good, it's in great condition.
When's the last time it was cleaned?
I don't know. And that's the thing, you go down the list, the air vents, I have no idea if they've ever been cleaned. I mean, have somebody come in and do that, I don't know. So there's a lot of places
Maybe
where
we should
there's.
start putting together a list of things. Roland could help with a lot
Yeah,
of that stuff.
and definitely, and that's
we
the
could help
thing.
put the list together.
That's a good idea. But and to answer your question, you go through that, through every single agenda and, budget item we have. There's a lot of places where things have just not been done because we didn't have the money.
Absolutely. It's one of the biggest with public spending. It gets deferred.
And that's the thing. And then it's like, well, we have this much money and we know how little money there's coming in from the town. So there's a place, like, for example, the stucco work we have to do on the back of the building. Well, we might have depending on how much that comes in for, we might be able to pay for that out of the building and repair and maintenance budget.
What happens if you go over your budget?
It depends. So the first answer is most of the time, if I go over in one line, we try to come in under one of the other lines to make up the difference. And that's what I did last year. So we came in basically, I think there was like a little bit of money left on the table because we won't go into that right now, but
But
if
if
it's
we
a
keep
more.
taking it from other areas, we'll never get that budget increased.
Exactly.
Because we don't know what we're spending on that line item.
Because we're spending it from outside the municipal budget.
Right.
And that's the thing. So then what happens, other than that, if we spent through the line inside the municipal budget, the first thing that could happen is that the town accountant could decline to pay the bill because there's insufficient funds, which is a possibility. The second thing that would happen is that they could pay for it anyways, and then we would have to try to go through a process of getting that money basically paid from free cash next year through going through the select board, as well as town meeting. So that would be a process. It's doable, but there's a lot of steps and meetings to do it.
I think we should work on finding out what our true numbers are.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay. And your last page, your org chart.
That was something
Wait,
that
Before we go to the last page, I have a question about the salaries.
yes, ma'am.
I know now's not the time for the town, but is there talk, at least for the future, of doing a comparative salary study?
FinCom's been talking about it for 2 years. At least the 2 years that I've been here, the FinCom members have talked about the need for one. Whether or not it happens, and not only whether or not it happens, but whether or not it gets implemented, are two different questions.
Yep.
Right.
So the problem is that Westport is a blended community, and whenever you pick comparable towns, there is a really big fight. Because, are we a farming town? Are we a suburban residential town? Are we a retirement home community town? Are we all of the above in one big pot? So it's hard to find towns that we exactly match up to. If you go by population, or if you go by average salary, or you go by residential land prices, it's always a big fight.
We did a comparison a few years ago with the veteran agent.
Yeah,
Surrounding towns, same size,
yeah,
population. And what we found is our veteran agent, even though we have like 16,000 people, had a higher caseload than surrounding towns.
Yep.
The surrounding towns were paid more money. So you had a little fight on your hands to prove that they were worth more money. And she ended up getting a raise at the salary increase time, but
Yeah.
they did bring her up more than the regular 2% or whatever they do.
And that's why that gets really tough. I mean, in Wareham, we were really lucky because the department heads were unionized too. So they had a lot more negotiating power to really do a comparable survey and a study. But, it's tough, especially with the financial status of the town, with so many town departments and so many services that are already so short-funded.
Yeah.
If, for example, if I was paid what Dartmouth paid their library director, we'd have to fire half the staff. And I would never accept that raise. For the record, I just want everyone to know that. I make the pledge to all of you and to the staff, I will not take a raise that will endanger the rest of the library staff's pay, period. But depending on what town you use as a comparable, you know,
Well, the Board of
Dartmouth wouldn't be comparable, they got a lot more people than we do.
Board of Library Commissioners does it straight by population, correct, when they publish salaries?
do, but then that's when you get into the really difficult place of, well, how does Westport compare it to other 16,000 people towns? I mean, if you compare us to Bourne, okay, but then you got a lot of differences between us and Bourne, or you look at, you know, what's it? I forget the other towns that are in our bracket.
Swansea.
Technically, we're in the same population bracket as Wareham, because they're right on that cusp, because the way that the MBLC does the population breakdowns is 15,000 to 25,000. So in that bracket is also Wareham. In that bracket is also Mattapoisett. Oh, Mattapoisett, I think, is only 10. I forget. I think Mattapoisett is in our bracket too. But Fairhaven is in our bracket. So, you know, you got down the list and it's like, well, but then they're not as much farming as we are. I mean, Wareham might be, but then they also have more commercial development like Dartmouth does. So then you get into the
I
whole,
think for our purposes, we wouldn't get that detailed into
No.
it. We should just look at the general population sizes
Right, right.
within a certain area.
yeah. And then you get into the really tough thing about the area, because then you look at Dartmouth, you look at Westport, the size of the town is completely different compared to, especially if you go like south of Boston. Those towns have the same population, but it might only be like, you know, 2 or 3 square miles, or Nahan, Lord help me, which I don't even know how Nahan exists as a town, but we won't go there. We'll
Okay.
focus.
Last page.
So good question, thank you.
Work chart. I see.
That was something-
I see library aids at 1530. Is that
Yep.
going to be affected by the increase in minimum wage to $15?
That is with it already in.
That's-
So the minimum wage increase went in as of last week.
Right.
So this is 2% on top of that minimum wage increase, which is what the town's baseline is, 2% increases year over year.
So this is already in effect?
Yes. Well, no, right now they're at 15. So
Okay.
the 30 cents is the 2% above 15.
How does that work? The 2% above? I'm not following.
So this would be a raise on top of what they're making now.
Okay. Were they making under 15?
They were. So as of last week, it was increased to 15 because the minimum wage went up on January 1st.
Now, how does that affect our budget for the year?
It depends.
Because that's something you would go over on now. If you,
I planned for it last year. So there's a little bit of a shortfall in their line item, but some people have been taking time off, and the part-time aides don't get any vacation time. So whenever they take time off, it's just money that they don't get paid. So right now we're waiting to see whether or not we might need to use state aid or not to cover that differential, but the money's there. So if we have to, we can, or we could drop their hours for a unpaid week off or something like that. I'm not too worried about it. They have a couple more weeks that they are going to need to take off between here and there. Or if somebody leaves for another position, then that would cover the shortfall, which we're not hoping will happen, but if it does, it does.
okay.
The big problem we have in that line item right now is we weren't planning on having them both at 15 hours. It's not so much the minimum wage increase, it was the hours having to go up because nobody wanted the position at only 6 hours a week. So when the previous holder of one of those positions retired, that was the big problem we had with that budget. But that's addressed in the next budget, and we won't have that issue next year.
Okay. Old business, long-range plan. I have a question to you, George. On the long-range plan.
Yes.
When are they due?
Whenever we turn them in.
I read that they were due December of each year.
So technically, there's an over-under in which there is a deadline of December to have them in if you're going to be applying for grants. The grants that we would apply to that have to have a long-range plan on the budget for, we do not regularly apply for. So because of that, unless we were going to apply for one of those grants that require having a long-range plan on file, whenever we turn it in is fine. Most of the grants that the MBLC have are tailored for specific programs or projects. They specifically design most of the grants to not be able to cover operating budgets because they don't want to give towns excuses to not fund operating budgets on the assumption that the NBLC will cover the differential. So there are grants that we could apply for to help pay for the seed bank or some of the different programming that we do, but we have not been regularly applying for them, so it's not emergentarily necessary for us to worry about it.
I guess my question was, so if we don't, there's no time frame to do it. They don't have to have one on file for, ours expires in '22.
Yep.
So we don't have to have one on file until we turn it in?
Unless we wanted to apply for a grant. That's the catch. So as right now, I'm not planning on applying for any of those grants. So that's the only caveat on it.
Okay.
Other than that, when we turn it in is when we turn it in.
All right, one of the other questions, do we have anybody doing grant writing for us? Is there anybody on staff that can do that?
We've done it before. Linda's done some, I've done some, Bonnie's done some. And I don't know if Amy ever has, but so there's at least 3 people on staff that have written grants and gotten them filled before.
Do you see anything going forward with writing grants?
We definitely could. I mean, but it's one of those things that I've been asked to apply for something for the Cultural Council just because they have money and they want to spend it. So they asked me, which I'm working on a couple different plans. Nothing quite ready yet. But other than that, there's nothing really imperative that we need to apply for with the MBLC. The seed bank basically is already covered by grants because the seeds are donated by seed companies. And then you just have to pay for shipping and handling, which the Friends cover. So that's pretty much taken care of. Other than that, there's funding that we could apply for children's services to pay for creating a play space, but we don't really have that much space down in the children's section to really put something like that in. There's some other funding for having programming around public health instruction or financial instruction, which I really like. That's something that's really near and dear to my heart, financial education, because when I was a kid in school, we didn't get any of that. So there's different programs that we could apply for, but we don't really do a lot of direct adult programming right now as it is. So going forward, there's stuff that we could apply for and programs that we could do. The big thing with us is the Cultural Council, which we work with a lot for performances or with artistic installations. And I'll tell you guys, what I'm working on right now is a proposal that I'll be putting in at some point, and I'll propose it to you first before I apply with the Cultural Council, for having book club kits where you can actually check out 6 copies of a book in one shot in a little plastic tote so that you and your friends or your family can actually run your own book club. And then the basic idea was to have 12 of those boxes so that if you have, up to 12 groups going in the year, you could each check out a different box and have enough for a whole year of book clubs. I'm still working on the list of books. That's where I am right now on that project. But other than that, that's the only grants that we're actively
Well,
looking at.
my main concern with that was with the long-range plan.
Yeah.
I don't want to be trying to rush to get something done if it expires December of '22,
Right. Well, whenever we finish it, it'll be 5 years from that,
from when we submit it.
however we write it up. So that would be up to the drafter of the document to take the information
So
and say,
would it be from the end of this one?
it would be how long it takes us. Well, as of right now, we're already past it.
Right, I understand.
So it would be from whenever we submit it,
Whenever
let's
we
say we
submit it?
finish writing it in June and say it's going to start in July. So that'll be FY '24.
July for 5 years.
So that would be FY '24 through FY '29.
Okay. All right.
So I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So what's the downfall of not applying for these grants? So if you, after all so many years, you're no longer writing grants, or you haven't written any grants, and now all of a sudden you decide that you want to,
Mhm.
is there a downside that you hadn't been applying for them?
No, other than the fact that, the people who are reviewing the grants might not have, seen our names, are not familiar with our library as much.
Right.
So there's an idea in grant writing that, if you submit, Eventually, people will, give you grants because they're used to your name, used to your applications. The
Right.
flip side of the coin happens sometimes too. If you apply too much, and if you get too many grants, then you might not get a grant you're applying for because you've already gotten so much and other people haven't gotten some. So that's the,
So the downfall being that your name is not out there if you're not applying.
right. So that's the trade-off. But with us, it's more of an issue of most of the time, most of the grants don't pay for staffing. There's a couple that do, but most of the time they don't. So with our staffing being as tight as it is, we don't do as much direct library programming as most other libraries do, just because we haven't had the staff. So most of the grants that they have, we never applied for because we wouldn't have the staff to really fulfill them. Or implement them, I should say. That's a better word.
Okay. Well, I will get a hold of the people on that committee. You two, I guess, right? Long-range plan? Because we didn't get together over the holidays, which is too much going on. And library outdoor amphitheater. I got an email from Scott. I emailed him last week, the guy that's working on that whole setup. And him and his helper, he called him his helper, went out and did a brief elevation of the whole bit. And he says, we got to talk.
Oh, boy.
Because he said, you'd need a walkway 200 feet long
200 feet long.
to get there by the time your grade is only allowed to drop so much, a quarter of an inch every so often. So I'm going to meet with him and we'll go over what alternatives we have. And you can go out with me, George, when we call him up.
Thank you.
But I don't know if it's going to be something like that because the elevation, you got to go back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
I don't know. But he finally did get back to me. He said sometime after Christmas, so I emailed him after Christmas. And between my email and when he replied, he came up. So, and that's that. The well tie-in is, I don't have any information on that yet at all.
That's going to work with the walkway,
Yeah,
correct?
that'll all come together. The tree, I'm waiting on Chris to get back to me. I think he's gonna get the limb cut this year, I'm not sure. You know, if we don't get it cut this year, we'll definitely get it cut in the spring.
Well, it's in the minutes, it's on the list.
Update on teak benches, I don't believe we have one. We had it moved last time at Carol's request.
People are using them, so I mean,
It wasn't my request. It was something the board had approved unanimously.
I know.
So it's not
We
me.
did it. We did it.
But you were a facilitator.
And I.
Instigator.
Yeah,
Instigator.
No, I pointed
Standing there
out
with your
that
arms
it
crossed,
has not
watching me
been
and Don move
done.
it.
Thank you for giving us that little nudge.
Yes.
You're welcome.
But I did want to let the board know, people are using them, so the kids
Really?
are having down there, and they have been.
Where, from the library?
Well, I don't know, they might not be in the library, but they're coming over from the school and they're sitting out there and they are using
Yeah.
them. We've been having such mild weather most of this
Yeah.
month that it's being used, so it's not a lot, but it's nice to see.
As long as they're made available for when we want to hold functions out there.
Yeah. Although I'm gonna have to replace one of the plaques, because,
I saw that it, something,
It's all
the
tarnished.
finish came off of it.
yeah, I think it was when we hit it with the whatchamacallit, but,
Yeah,
Company
it looks,
replaced it?
no, because it was what we did, because when we were treating the bench. So,
The only other thing that, okay, that's, no, you got, I'm sorry, telescope policy review.
yep, just if anybody wanted to tweak anything in the telescope
I
policies.
think it looks fine. Other, I want to throw something out and see if I got anybody would think about it. How would we each like to try to get 2 new members for the library? Try to increase our patrons. I'll try to get 2 new ones.
I'll try.
Okay. Everybody want to try to get 2?
Oh, sure.
That'll be some nice numbers to
Yeah,
George turn in.
definitely.
The other thing, if everybody goes through that front door, your numbers go up.
Oh, yeah. It's true.
Okay, I don't have anything else.
Elections are coming up.
When are they coming up?
Yes, I have not heard yet.
Papers are available.
When?
Nomination papers became available last week. And they're due sometime in February. And there are 2 spots available. One is mine and one is Carol's. and I think I'm planning to run again.
You are?
I think so. I'd like to
Good.
stay on the board and see the walkway and all of that done,
Okay.
and I figure it's gonna be a couple of years.
I would,
I
yeah.
think the money's there
Yeah.
to do it.
But actually getting things done, that's just my personal feeling.
Okay.
It helps having someone who's been through as many library construction projects as you have.
Well, and then there's such a thing as term limits, which I favor when it comes to our politicians.
You know, I don't, but we'll talk about that later.
Okay, thanks for bringing that up about nominations. And I know Carol's not going to run again.
Right.
You've been on here a number of years.
5.
5.
Wow.
Can we still go to lunch?
My question would be, would you want to stay on the long-range plan, even if you aren't on the, technically a trustee?
Well, I was thinking that I could stay on as a
Community member.
townie,
Yeah,
Yeah,
or, you know,
good,
that's a good idea.
good.
I think that'd be a good idea.
That's an excellent idea.
that way I can keep nudging.
We need somebody.
Somebody has to do it, yeah.
Yes.
Carol's taught me a lot about accounting the last couple of years, so I appreciate it.
You can give a couple copies of these to
Yeah,
people?
definitely.
So do we encourage people to run for vacant seats? Or
Yes.
do they just let them work?
Both. So sometimes there are people who will take out nomination papers and, go for it themselves. Other times we'll
You asked.
nudge
Yes.
folks who, we feel might be beneficial to have on the board. Either, obviously you all, if you know anyone who would be a good fit and who cares about the library and would be helpful, please do reach out to folk. So I know there were some people.
She would ask me to join a long time ago. She
Yeah.
said, you're over here all the time. Why don't you just do it? So that's why I did it.
And obviously, it helps having people who use the library. That's a nice thing. I've worked in other towns where sometimes people, run to be a trustee just to get elected to something and use that as a launching point to something else, which
It's
is
good
Good
example.
on a resume.
Yeah.
We were
But-
just here knitting, and
Yeah.
George came in and said,
Yeah.
No, it's one of those things, and I've said this to everyone before, and I'll say it again. This is the most directly involved board of trustees that actually use the library that I've ever worked in, I've ever been in, and it makes a difference. You guys actually use the library as a library, so you have a different relationship and understanding of how the library works than most other boards of trustees I've ever been a part of.
We had a similar situation at the VFW. The board of directors runs the bar, not the post. And the board of directors, there was no one on the board of directors that actually went to the bar.
Yeah,
So you have people that don't go there trying to tell you what to do.
yeah.
So we kind of made, if you're going to be on the board, you at least have to go once in a while, so you know what's going on.
Yeah, and that's the
So it's
thing.
worked out much better since we've done that.
Yeah. So actively finding folks who are using the library or would be using the library, that helps, as opposed to just getting anybody who just wants to put their name down to get elected to something. So I think that makes a difference. So if you know anyone to take your spot, feel free to. The other thing
Or
too,
anybody
obviously,
else that knows somebody that might want.
and there are some folk who, in the last round, I was really impressed with the candidates because, they went out and they got signatures and, that was hard, but they did it. So I'm impressed to them,
Right.
it was easy.
Well, when we.
But if somebody did want to run, but they didn't want to do that, you can try to do the write-in thing, which does work also. There's nothing wrong with
In
it.
good weather, transfer station on Saturdays.
Yeah.
Get a lot of signatures.
I went to the food bank,
Yeah,
and I actually stood outside
Yeah.
and got a lot of my signatures from there.
Yeah.
I went to the town hall, I went to the annex, went to the cemetery,
Yeah.
spoke to the guys out there.
Were they standing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, upright.
Yes,
Okay.
they were
And they're
standing.
registered voters.
I
They
mean,
were registered voters.
no comment. I'm from New Bedford. That doesn't say much.
Any other thoughts for discussion on anything? Motion to adjourn?
I move that
1:15.
we adjourn at 1:16.
Everybody in favor? Aye, aye, aye.